Hello, welcome to Community Conversations. I'm your host, Doris Ballard. And this program is available on Concord TV's Channel 22, on demand at yourconcordtv.org, on our YouTube channel, as well as on iTunes as a free podcast. My guest today is someone quite special who just won the Concord High School Poetry Out Loud competition. With that, I want to welcome Hannah Eliason. Hannah, welcome.
Thank you very much.
So you look very lovely, I might say, as you
you.
did the day that I saw you recite your poem at the high school auditorium. So what I want to know now is all about you and what made you decide to be a part of this, and give a little bit of the background to the public as to what a high school junior, what motivates you to become involved, and how was the process. So here we go. All right, so you are of course, at Concord High. You're a junior now, and you're 17.
Mm-hmm.
And tell us a little bit about yourself. Do you have any brothers or sisters?
I am an only child.
Oh, okay.
So that brings
There's
struggles.
a lot of benefits to that.
Yes, there is, but there's also some struggles, but that's
Oh.
okay. And what really brought me into Poetry Out Loud was my love for poetry. I've been very into poetry for a while now, and my friend actually introduced me to Poetry Out Loud and said, I think you'd be really good at this, you should try it. And she was also a competitor. So
This year?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I was very thankful that she introduced me to the competition. And
How did she feel about that? Because she introduced you to it and then you won. Was she okay with that? I'm sure she was.
She was okay with it because
Yeah.
she knew how much I loved poetry
Mhm.
before, and how it really does inspire me to kind of speak publicly and really show people what poets mean by their words.
A lot of people your age especially are probably not as into poetry as you are, I'm guessing. I can only remember when I was in high school, poetry, I wish I could have spoken to the poet to ask what they meant. And so we left it up to the teacher to explain it. But without the teacher there with me all the time explaining what a poem was all about, I kind of lost interest. But good for you that you have a love of poetry, because
Thank
it is.
you.
So do you write poetry yourself?
I do write poetry myself. It's something that's very dear to me, and I enjoy doing it whenever I have free time.
So what kind of poetry do you like writing?
I like writing really anything that I'm feeling at the moment, whether it's sad or happy. It's just, I like to write about an experience that I've had or a struggle in my life that's hard to express while it's like having a conversation with someone, because it really helps me express my emotions in that moment in time. So I think that's really special.
I hope you're saving all of your poems, because that could be really precious to you in the future, I'm sure.
Yeah.
All right, so poetry is a wonderful way to express your feelings. Now, who are some of your favorite poets?
I really like Maya Angelou, and
Well, that's one of the most famous ones that are more recent.
yeah.
Now, how did you happen to pick the title of the one that won the competition for you? Did it take you a long time to pick that poem?
Yes, because there are many poems on the Poetry Out Loud website. There's about 800.
Wow. So you do get a list?
Yes, you have to pick from the list.
My gosh, 800. How did you ever narrow it down to one?
Well, first I tried clicking on a letter and saying, this is the letter that's going to be my poem. And then I clicked on another letter, and then I ended up going through the entire alphabet. And the one that really spoke out to me was The Coming of the Plague by Walden Keyes. And it's not so much about a plague per se. It is perceived that way, but from my understanding of the poem, it's more towards his struggles in life, and I find that very parallel to some of the things that I've gone through. So I think it was a very good poem for me to speak in the competition.
Now, let's talk a little bit about the guidelines of the competition. You have, I believe, it was 4 judges, of which I was honored to be one. And it was really very interesting. There were 7 competitors, 7 students in all. And you can't really miss any words as well, right? I mean, so there is someone watching, looking at every word as you're reciting. And it has
Yes.
to be all by heart, of course.
Yes.
You can't have notes or anything like that. So you have to recite it totally by heart. So were you aware if you made a mistake? It didn't show if you did, because you certainly looked like it was perfect. So what was that like, to know that someone is in the front row looking at the entire poem as you're to see if you missed anything?
It's a little nerve-wracking, but I was very confident going into it that I knew my poems. If I did make a mistake, then I just kept going on, because there's nothing you can do to change it once you said it. And I don't know, it didn't really matter to me whether I messed up a word or left a whole line out, because in that moment in time I really was feeling the poem, and I think that it really I really expressed it very well. So.
Did you have to learn more than one poem?
For the school competition, you have to have 2 poems in case there's a tie.
So if there's a tie, you need to be ready to recite a second poem.
Yes.
What was your second choice?
My second choice was The Children's Hour by Henry Wadsworth Longfellow.
Now you had, very famous, of course,
Yeah.
poet. You had 2. And what made you choose The Coming of the Plague over the other?
I think it was that personal connection that I really had with the poem. The Children's Hour is very much softer and more of a father figure speaking to his children, and in that aspect I didn't really have that connection on such a strength that I had with The Coming of the Plague. So I think that for that specific competition, it was a better choice for me to do.
Well, it worked, clearly.
Thank you.
If you're just tuning in, this is Community Conversations. I am speaking with the winner of the Concord High School Poetry Out Loud competition, which happened just a couple weeks ago. Hannah Eliason. She's a 17-year-old 11th grader at the high school. And now you're going to be going on to the regionals, which we'll talk about in a little bit. But the preparation. So when was the first time you had to recite your poem in front of a crowd or an audience?
The first time that I had to recite my poem in front of a formal audience was the school competition.
Was it the school competition?
It was the school competition.
So did you practice in front of the mirror, probably, right? I would think.
A bunch of
A bunch
times
of
in front of the
times,
mirror.
right? And did you practice in front of your family?
Yes, I practiced in front of my family and family friends and some of my best friends quite a bit. I'm pretty sure they probably know the poems by heart as well.
Did they give you any of their input?
Yeah, a lot of people had many different thoughts about what I should put into my poems, and I did incorporate some of those thoughts, but I also tried to stay true to what I thought of the poem. But they did help me a lot in the aspect of memorizing it, because if I missed a word, then they would tell me, so I would know not to miss it again.
Right. All right, so how long before the actual competition did you start thinking about this?
Well, I didn't know about the competition until about 2.5 weeks before the competition.
Just 2.5 weeks? My gosh. Wow.
So a lot of the classes had been preparing for months, and I prepared for 2.5 weeks.
So you just thought about it 2.5 weeks before the competition and said, I'm going to do this?
Yep.
Pretty much?
Yeah. Yes.
Wow, it worked. It worked. All right, so what was it about the competition that you loved the most? Was there any part of it, how did you get in the mood, and what did you love the most before recitation?
I think the aspect of the competition that I loved the most was hearing everyone's different poems and how they all read them so differently, and how they were on such different topics. And I would have never chose any of the poems that they chose, but the poems work perfectly for them. And I think that's a pretty cool aspect of the competition, because it's all these different poems that may not reach out to you, but you have emotional connection with it because the person speaking it is so strong.
Clearly, they picked it like you did because it meant something
Exactly.
to them. And for those listening and tuning in right now, we will be having the actual video of Hannah's recitation of her Poetry Out Loud piece, The Coming of the Plague by Weldon Keys. I never heard of Weldon Keys, so you're making Weldon popular again, apparently. All right, so the one thing that struck me too is that there might be a tendency, I would think, of the students to overact. So where does it draw the line between being a little too out there as more of a theatrical performance? I mean, it really shouldn't be a theatrical performance from what I was told as a judge, but to be appropriate to the piece. How did you decide what you wanted to do? How do you wanted to approach the recitation of the poem in that way?
I think that the way in like hand gestures and the tone of your voice, for the poem to be successful, it has to be very natural to you. So I tried not to incorporate many hand gestures that wouldn't have come naturally if I was reading it for the first time out loud. I think that for that poem, less was more, because it was a very deep, dark kind of poem. So I just tried to keep what was natural and just kind of feel it through my tone and articulation of the poem.
Now, how long was your poem? Some of them were very, very short, and some were kind of long, actually, but yours, what I thought, just right. Did that come into play when you were choosing your poem, how long it would be?
Well, for the competition, there is requirements that one poem has to be 25 lines or less, and one poem has to be pre-20th century. And then you get another poem. And the one that I spoke for the school competition happened to be my 25 lines or less. So on the website, they have the different categories of where the poems are. So I looked under 25 lines or less, and I found it, and that's kind of how I found it in the length that seemed perfect. So.
Are you involved in theater?
I am not involved in theater.
That's very surprising.
A lot of my friends that were in the competition were involved in theater. So I was very surprised that many people thought I did very well compared to them, because they're so comfortable on the stage, where I was very, very nervous.
Well, it didn't show at all.
Thank you.
What did you do to make you calm your nerves down beforehand? Anything, did you have a little technique like?
I don't know. I guess I did, in the fact that my best friend was also in the competition, and I was just like squeezing her hand before, and she was kind of calming me down. But then once I got on the stage, I didn't realize how bright the lights were. So then when I got on stage and there was bright lights and I couldn't see anyone.
You couldn't see anyone.
It was a little, like, it helped a little bit, because I didn't have 100 faces staring at me.
Did you know that Concord TV was taping it?
I had no idea
That
Concord
probably was
TV
a good
taping
thing,
it.
I would think. All right. And having said that, I'm going to just remind those who just tuned in that this is Community Conversations, a production by Concord TV. It is also a podcast, a free podcast. And Hannah Eliason is my guest today. Lovely young 17-year-old, very talented poet herself. I wouldn't be surprised if you weren't very talented. I should have asked you to bring some of your original poems in. That's next time. And she recited The Coming of the Plague by Weldon Keys at Concord High School's competition for Poetry Out Loud, and she was the winner. So, and we are going to be showing Hannah reciting her actual winning recitation at the end of this program, because we taped it for Concord TV and for the public to enjoy. So now, what's next after this? We're hoping that as a Concord High School student, of course, Concord TV is located in Concord High School, so we have, perhaps a little bias, not sure. But the regional is going to be held when? And it's at SNHU, Southern New Hampshire University.
The regional is on March 7th at 6 p.m. at SNHU. It happens to be on a school day, so
So
that's a
how
little-
is that going to work out?
hopefully.
You have to skip school?
Well, since it's later in the evening, it shouldn't be too much of a
Oh,
problem.
okay, so you're going to be at school all day, and then you know you have to go and
Yeah,
not really perform, but
I'll be like anticipating the whole
Right,
day. and
okay.
It should be pretty exciting.
you must be very excited about that.
I am very excited about it, and I have some friends from different schools coming that are in our region for Poetry Out Loud. So I'm excited for them to see it as well.
Any idea how many will be competing at the regionals?
I think there's 10 to 12 schools that have a winner competing at Poetry Out Loud. So it should be a pretty good mix of people.
So I'm surprised you're not in theater. You should be, because you were very good.
Thank
and I
you.
had a feeling that, she must be in theater. And not that you need to be to do this competition at all, but I think that you probably are natural.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right. Okay, so what would happen, so that after the regional, it goes to New Hampshire. So if you win the regional, it goes to the state. And then it's national. So before we started the program, you told me that you knew that a girl from Alaska won the nationals last year. What do you receive for any of your hard work? Do you get anything at different levels?
Well, for the school level, I received a gift card to Con Man and a free movie at Red River, but I also received almost like a scholarship from the New Hampshire Institute of Art if I go to their school for about $10,000 overall
Wow.
for all 4 years. So that's pretty exciting. But on the state level, you win $200 for the winner. And then some of that money goes to getting books for the literary.
Poetry books, right,
Yeah.
right.
And then for nationals, you win $20,000
Wow.
if you win. And
Is it a scholarship or is it a check for $20,000?
I think it's a check.
Either way you look at it, it's
Either way you look at it, it's wonderful. And then you
Right.
win a whole bunch of money for poetry books for your school and district.
That's great. So what do you think you'd like to do when you graduate high school?
I would like to go to college.
Good.
And I would like to study some kind of science.
So you love poetry, but you also love science. You're a well-rounded young lady. That's wonderful.
Mhm.
So you find that you have an interest in science. Any particular field?
Well, I would like to major in neuroscience in college and maybe be a psychiatrist when I'm older.
That's wonderful. Okay. All right. Now, you had that second poem. Do you remember it offhand? Is it something, because we're going to be having our listeners and viewers watch and hear the actual competition in a little bit. But do you remember your second poem? Because they're not going to get to hear that, and I didn't get to hear that as a judge.
Yeah, I know my second poem.
Yeah? Do you want to look at the camera, maybe, and recite it? Are you
Sure.
comfortable with that?
Yeah.
Well, go ahead.
The Children's Hour by Henry Wadsworth Longfellow. Between the darkness and the daylight, when the night is beginning to lower, comes a pause in the day's occupations that is known as the children's hour. I hear in the chamber above me the patter of little feet, the sound of a door that is opened, and voices soft and sweet. From my study, I see in the lamplight, descending the broad hall stair, grave Alice and laughing Allegra, and Edith with golden hair. A whisper, and then a silence. Yet I know by their merry eyes that they are plotting and planning together to take me by surprise. A sudden rush from the stairway, A sudden raid from the hall. By 3 doors left unguarded, they enter my castle wall. They climb up into my turret, over the arms and back of my chair. If I try to escape, they surround me. They seem to be everywhere. They almost devour me with kisses. Their arms about me entwine, till I think of the Bishop of Bingen in his mouse tower on the Rhine. Do you think, old blue-eyed banditti, because you have scaled the wall, such an old mustache as I am is not a match for you all? I have you fast in my fortress, and will not let you depart, but put you down into the dungeon, in the round tower of my heart. And there will I keep you forever, yes, forever and a day, till the walls shall crumble to ruin and molder in dust away.
That was beautiful.
Thank you.
Congratulations, that was beautiful. And I love the way the choices you made. It was very natural. So you didn't say, I'm going to put my hand up when I say that, or I'm going to do it. It's very, very natural.
Thank you.
I can see why you would have won probably with that recitation as well.
Thank you.
You know what I liked about when you were reciting that poem, I could actually envision, I was seeing what you were describing. So that's a testament, of course, to that amazing poet and the way you delivered it.
Thank you very
So,
much.
what do you hope you'll get from all of this experience? What are you gaining from this experience beyond the opportunity to probably win, which we hope you will?
Well, the opportunity to win, it's a good thing, but it's not really what I have my mind set out for during this competition. What I really hope is to grow as a person and a poet, and to really feel more comfortable talking in front of people. I think is a great way to learn public speaking while doing something you love to do. So I think that's really what I'm looking to take out of it.
Well, we're all out of time now, so I thoroughly enjoyed having you on the program. I'm so happy that I asked you to recite that second poem because it was really beautifully done.
Thank you very
And Hannah Eliason, Concord High School's winner of this year's Poetry Out Loud competition. We wish you all the best and good luck, and we'll be rooting for you to take home the trophy on March 7th, yes?
Mm-hmm.
And thank you so much for being on the show today.
Thank you very much.
And thank you for tuning in. And here is Hannah Eliason with reciting her winning poem.
The Coming of the Plague by Weldon Keys. September was when it began. Locusts dying in the fields, our dogs silent, moving like shadows on a wall, and strange worms crawling, flies of a kind we had never seen before, huge vineyard moths, badgers and snakes abandoning their holes in the field, the fruit gone rotten. Queer fungi sprouting, the fields and woods covered with spider webs. Black vapors rising from the earth, all these and more began to fall. The ravens flew round the hospital in pairs. Where there was water, we could hear the sound of beating clothes all through the night. We could not count all the miscarriages, the quarrels, the jealousies. And one day in the field, I saw a swarm of frogs, swollen and hideous, hundreds upon hundreds, sitting on each other, huddled together, silent, ominous, and heard the sound of rushing wind.